She knocked at midnight. A grieving widow, asking if his house could be her home. As he opened the door, it made folks wonder, was this the moment two broken hearts began to heal together? It's well past midnight on a moonless October night in 1897, and the Wyoming wind is howling like a banshee across the prairie. Most decent folks are tucked safe in their beds, but not Samuel McKenna. He's sitting by his dying fire, nursing a cup of coffee that's gone cold hours ago, staring into flames that mirror the loneliness eating away at his soul. Sam's ranch sits like an island in an ocean of grass, miles from the nearest neighbor, exactly the way he's wanted it for the past 3 years. No visitors, no complications, no reminders of the life he lost when fever took his wife Martha. Just him, his cattle, and the blessed silence that helps him forget how empty a house can feel when there's no one left to fill it. Then comes the knock. 3 sharp raps on his front door, cutting through the wind like gunshots in a graveyard. Sam's hand instinctively moves to the Colt revolver on his hip. Nobody comes calling at this hour with good intentions. Could be drifters looking for easy prey, or worse, men running from something that might follow them to his doorstep. But when he opens the door, rifle ready, what he finds stops him cold. A woman stands on his porch, soaked to the bone from the driving rain he hadn't even noticed starting. Her dark hair clings to her face like shadows, and she's clutching a small leather suitcase with white knuckles. She's maybe 30, with the kind of beauty that's been worn down by hardship but not broken by it. Her dress is simple but well made, suggesting she's not some common vagrant seeking handouts. What really gets Sam's attention, though, are her eyes. They're the color of storm clouds, filled with a desperation so raw it makes his chest tighten with recognition. He's seen that look before in his own mirror, every morning for 3 years. "Please," she says, and her voice is barely above a whisper, nearly lost in the wind. "I know it's late, and I know you don't know me, but I need help. My name is Catherine Whitmore, and I have nowhere else to go." Sam should close the door, should tell her to head into town, find the hotel, come back in the morning when decent people conduct their business. Every instinct built from years of protecting himself from further pain screams at him to turn away, to maintain the walls he's so carefully constructed around his broken heart. But something in her voice, a quality he can't quite name, makes him hesitate. Maybe it's the way she doesn't beg, doesn't grovel, just states her need with the quiet dignity of someone who's used to standing on her own 2 feet. Maybe it's how she reminds him of Martha in that moment before she died, when she asked him not to close himself off from the world. Or maybe it's just that he recognizes a fellow survivor of life's cruelest blows. "Ma'am," Sam says, stepping back from the doorway, "you'd better come inside before you catch your death." As Catherine Whitmore steps across his threshold, bringing with her the scent of rain and something indefinitely feminine that his house hasn't known in years, Sam can't shake the feeling that his carefully ordered solitude is about to become a thing of the past. If you think this midnight encounter is surprising, just wait until you hear what she tells him next. The warmth of Sam's kitchen hits Catherine like a physical force, and she can't suppress the shiver that runs through her entire body. She sets her suitcase down carefully, as if it contains something precious and fragile, while Sam lights another lamp to chase away the shadows that seem to cling to every corner of the room. "Sit," he says, gesturing to a chair at the worn wooden table. His voice is gruff but not unkind, like a man who's forgotten how to talk to people but remembers the basic courtesies. "I'll put some coffee on. You look half frozen." Catherine lowers herself into the chair, her wet dress clinging uncomfortably to her skin, but she doesn't complain. She watches Sam move around his kitchen with the efficient movements of a man who's learned to take care of himself, noting the way he avoids looking directly at her, the careful distance he maintains even in the small space. "I should explain," Catherine begins, accepting the tin cup of hot coffee he offers with hands that shake slightly. Whether from cold or nerves, Sam can't tell. My husband died 6 weeks ago. Consumption, the doctor said, though it took him faster than anyone expected. Sam nods, understanding immediately the particular weight of sudden loss. I'm sorry for your trouble, ma'am. Losing someone that way, it's hard to make sense of. James was a good man, Catherine continues, staring into her coffee as if it might hold answers to questions she's afraid to ask. A merchant in Cheyenne, well respected, with interests in several businesses. We had a comfortable life, or so I thought. There's something in her tone that suggests the story is about to take a darker turn, and Sam finds himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. 3 years of isolation haven't completely killed his instinct to protect, especially when faced with a woman who looks like she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. After the funeral, men started coming around, Catherine says, her voice growing quieter. Business partners? They claimed. Saying James owed money, had made promises, entered into agreements I knew nothing about. They wanted the house, the shop, everything we'd built together. Said it was all collateral for debts I'd never heard of. Sam's jaw tightens. He's seen enough of the world to know how quickly vultures circle when they smell vulnerability. How fast a grieving widow can lose everything to men who prey on the defenseless. The lawyer I consulted said I had few options, Catherine continues. The documents appeared legitimate, and without James to verify their claims, it would be my word against theirs. I tried to fight, but every day brought new demands, new threats. They made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, things might become unpleasant. The fear in her voice is real and immediate, not the distant echo of past trauma, but the sharp edge of present danger. Sam realizes that Catherine Whitmore isn't just seeking shelter from the storm, she's running from something far more threatening than wind and rain. 3 days ago, one of them came to the house after dark, she says, her knuckles white around the coffee cup. He made it clear that there were other ways I could settle James's debts, ways that didn't involve money. When I refused, he said I had until the end of the week to reconsider, or they'd come back and make the decision for me. Sam's hand clenches into a fist on the table. The protective rage that surges through him surprises him with its intensity. He thought 3 years of numbness had killed such feelings. So you ran, he says, and it's not a question. I ran, Catherine confirms, took what I could carry, and left in the middle of the night. But I couldn't go to family. I have none left. Couldn't stay in Cheyenne where they'd find me. I needed somewhere safe, somewhere they wouldn't think to look. She looks up at him then, meeting his eyes for the first time since entering his house, and Sam sees steel beneath the fear. I didn't come here by accident, Mr. McKenna, she says quietly. James mentioned your name in his final days, said you were a man who could be trusted, someone who'd helped him once when he was in trouble. He said if anything ever happened to him, if I ever needed help, you were someone I could turn to. Sam's coffee cup freezes halfway to his lips, his mind racing through memories he spent 3 years trying to bury. James Whitmore. The name hits him like a punch to the gut, dragging up images of dusty streets, desperate gunfights, and the kind of choices that haunt a man's dreams. James never told you about Deadwood, did he? Sam asks, though he already knows the answer from the confusion in Catherine's eyes. About what happened there in 2085? Catherine shakes her head, leaning forward with the intensity of someone finally getting answers to questions that have been eating away at her. He rarely spoke of his time before we married. Said the past was best left buried. Sam stands abruptly, walking to the window to stare out into the storm-lashed darkness. His reflection stares back at him, weathered face, prematurely gray hair, eyes that have seen too much violence and too much loss. He'd been a different man in Deadwood, before Martha, before the ranch, before he learned that sometimes the cost of being a hero is higher than anyone should have to pay. I wasn't always a rancher, Sam says finally, his voice carrying the weight of old regrets. Used to wear a badge, Worked as a deputy marshal in some of the roughest towns the territory had to offer. Deadwood was my last assignment before I quit law enforcement for good. He turns back to face Catherine, noting how she sits perfectly still, afraid that any movement might stop him from finally telling the truth she desperately needs to hear. Your husband was running a freight business there, moving goods between the mining camps and legitimate supply lines. Problem was, some of those goods weren't exactly legal, and some very dangerous men decided James knew too much about their operations. They wanted him dead, and they weren't particular about who else got hurt in the process. Sam's hand unconsciously moves to his left shoulder, where a bullet scar from that long-ago confrontation still aches when the weather turns cold. 3 men cornered him in an alley behind his warehouse, fully intending to solve their problem permanently. I happened to be passing by when I heard the commotion. You saved his life, Catherine breathes, understanding flooding her features. I did what any decent man would do, Sam says, though they both know that's not entirely true. But James never forgot it. Over the years, he'd send letters, money sometimes, though I always sent it back, said he owed me a debt he could never repay. Sam returns to his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 38 years. After Martha died, the letters stopped coming. I figured James had finally given up, trying to maintain a connection with a man who'd made it clear he wanted to be left alone. He never gave up, Catherine says softly. Even at the end, when the fever was taking him, he talked about the marshal who'd saved his life, who'd shown him what real courage looked like. He made me promise that if I ever needed help, I'd find you. Said you were the kind of man who'd protect what was right, no matter the cost. The irony isn't lost on Sam. For 3 years, he's been running from exactly the kind of situation Catherine has brought to his doorstep: complications, connections, the messy business of caring about other people's problems. He'd built his isolation like a fortress, convinced that the only way to avoid further pain was to avoid further involvement. But James Whitmore had seen something in him that night in Deadwood, something Sam thought he'd buried along with his badge and his willingness to fight other people's battles. The debt James claimed to owe wasn't really about money or obligation. It was about the belief that some men, when tested, will choose to stand and fight rather than walk away. Those men who are after you, Sam says, his voice taking on the hard edge of authority that once made hardened criminals think twice about their choices. You know their names? Catherine nods, reaching into her suitcase to produce a small leather journal. I wrote down everything I could remember about James's business dealings, everyone who came to the house, every conversation I overheard. If they're going to destroy my life, I want to know exactly who's doing it and why. Sam takes the journal, feeling its weight like a weapon being placed in his hands. He knows that opening it will mean crossing a line he'd sworn never to cross again, stepping back into a world where good men die for doing the right thing, and justice comes at the barrel of a gun. But as he looks at Catherine Whitmore, brave, desperate, trusting him with her life based on a dead man's promise, Sam realizes that some lines are meant to be crossed. Sam leads Catherine down a narrow hallway lined with photographs she can't quite make out in the lamplight, their footsteps muffled by a worn rug that's seen better days. The house feels larger than it appeared from outside, but there's an emptiness to it that goes beyond mere vacancy. It's the hollow feeling of a place where life once flourished, but has since retreated into shadow. This was. Sam starts, then stops, his hand resting on a closed door like it might burn him. For a moment, Catherine thinks he's going to change his mind, find her somewhere else to sleep. But then his jaw sets with determination, and he turns the handle. The door opens to reveal a room frozen in time. Moonlight filters through lace curtains that haven't been touched by dust, falling across a bed made with military precision. A woman's hairbrush sits on the vanity, silver-backed and gleaming, next to a small collection of books and a handmade music box. Martha's room, Sam says simply, though the words seemed to stick in his throat. She died 3 years ago come Christmas. Fever took her in 2 days. Catherine steps inside carefully, understanding instinctively that she's being allowed into a sacred space that Sam probably hasn't opened since his wife's death. The room smells faintly of lavender and cedar, preserved like a shrine to love lost too soon. She was beautiful, Catherine observes, noting the tintype photograph on the bedside table, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. You can see it in her face, the way she looked at the world. Like she expected the best from people. Sam nods, his throat working as he fights emotions he thought he'd successfully buried. Martha never met a stranger, never saw a problem she couldn't fix with kindness and hard work. This ranch was her dream as much as mine. Catherine touches the music box lightly, and its lid springs open to reveal a tiny dancing couple, while a soft melody begins to play. The sound seems impossibly loud in the quiet house, and Sam flinches as if struck. I'm sorry, Catherine says quickly, closing the lid. I shouldn't have. No, Sam interrupts, surprising them both. It's been too quiet for too long. Martha loved that song, said it reminded her of the dance where we first met. I know what it's like, Catherine says quietly, to lose the person who made life make sense. To wake up every morning in a world that suddenly feels too big and too empty. Sam turns to face her, and for the first time since she arrived, she sees past the careful walls he's constructed around his pain. Thank you, she says, meaning more than just the room. Martha would be proud of you for helping me. Dawn breaks gray and subdued over the McKenna ranch, the storm having blown itself out sometime before sunrise, leaving behind a world washed clean and smelling of wet earth and new possibilities. Catherine wakes to unfamiliar sounds, cattle lowing in the distance, the rhythmic creak of a windmill, the gentle clatter of someone moving around in the kitchen below. For a moment, she lies still in Martha's bed, watching dust motes dance in the morning light filtering through those carefully maintained lace curtains. It's the first peaceful awakening she's had since James died, the first morning without the immediate crush of dread that's become her constant companion. When she finally ventures downstairs, she finds Sam at the kitchen table, a count book spread before him, a cup of coffee steaming at his elbow. He's already been working for hours, if his damp hair and muddy boots are any indication. But he looks up when she enters with something that might almost be a smile. Coffee's fresh, he says, nodding toward the pot on the stove. There's eggs and bacon if you're hungry. Figured you might need a decent meal after yesterday. Catherine helps herself to coffee, noting how Sam has automatically set out an extra cup, an extra plate, as if having someone else in the house is something he can adjust to more easily than she'd expected. She moves around his kitchen with surprising ease, finding bread for toast, butter in the cold box, falling into a rhythm that feels natural despite the newness of their situation. You don't have to cook. Sam protests when he realizes what she's doing, but there's no real conviction in his voice. I want to, Catherine replies, and she realizes it's true. It feels good to have someone to cook for again, to perform the simple domestic rituals that gave structure and meaning to her days with James. They eat in comfortable silence, the morning sun growing stronger through the kitchen windows, warming a space that feels less empty than it did the night before. Catherine finds herself studying Sam's face in the daylight, the lines carved by grief and solitude, but also the fundamental strength that drew James to trust him all those years ago. I've been thinking, Sam says, pushing back from the table, about those men who are after you. If they're as determined as you say, they won't give up just because you left Cheyenne. They'll start looking, asking questions, following trails. Before Catherine can respond, they're interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Sam's entire demeanor changes instantly, the relaxed man who shared breakfast with her disappearing behind the alert, dangerous presence she glimpsed last night. 2 riders, he says, moving to the window. Don't recognize them, but they're not dressed like honest ranch hands. The knock comes sharp and demanding nothing, like Catherine's desperate appeal of the night before. The standoff on Sam's front porch stretches taut as a bowstring, with two dangerous men facing down one, and Catherine watching through the window, with her heart hammering against her ribs. She can see the calculation in Harrison's eyes, the way he's measuring Sam like a predator sizing up potential prey. "Mr. McKenna," Harrison says, his voice carrying the oily smoothness of a snake oil salesman, "I think there might be some confusion here. Mrs. Whitmore isn't just any woman. She's a widow who's recently come into some complicated circumstances. Her late husband had business dealings with our employer, and she left Cheyenne rather suddenly without settling certain obligations." Sam doesn't budge from his position in the doorway, effectively blocking their view into the house. "I still don't know anyone by that name, and I'm not in the habit of keeping track of every widow in the territory. Unless you have official business here, I'd appreciate it if you'd get off my property." Cole takes a half step forward, his coat falling open just enough to make the threat clear. He's younger than Harrison, with nervous energy that suggests he's eager to prove himself through violence. "Maybe we should take a look around, just to make sure you're not harboring any fugitives." "You got a warrant?" Sam asks, his voice dropping to the dangerous quiet of a man who's done his share of fighting. "Because unless you're wearing a badge and carrying legal papers, you're just trespassers with poor manners." Harrison raises a placating hand, sensing his partner's eagerness might push this beyond the point of no return. "We're not looking for trouble, Mr. McKenna. We're simply trying to locate Mrs. Whitmore so we can discuss her husband's affairs in a civilized manner." "And if she doesn't want to be found?" Sam asks, the question itself an admission. The mask slips from Harrison's face, revealing something cold and ruthless. "She'll want to be found, Mr. McKenna. Mrs. Whitmore has something that belongs to our employer, and one way or another, we're going to collect it. The only question is whether this gets handled quietly or whether things become unpleasant." "I think you boys have overstayed your welcome," Sam says, his hand now openly resting on his gun. "Time to ride." Cole's patience snaps. "Listen, old man, we know she's here." He doesn't finish. Sam's gun clears leather with fluid motion, the barrel coming to rest steady as stone and pointed at Cole's chest. The younger man freezes, suddenly understanding he's facing someone far more dangerous than a simple rancher. "I said ride," Sam repeated with absolute authority. "Next time I see either of you on my land, I'll assume you're here to steal my cattle, and I'll act accordingly." Harrison's eyes narrow as he reassesses the situation. "This isn't over. We'll be back, Mr. McKenna, and next time we'll bring more friends." The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly as Sam works with furious concentration, checking fence lines, securing gates, and positioning supplies in strategic locations around the ranch. Catherine watches from the kitchen window, recognizing the methodical preparation of a man who's fought defensive battles before. "You should leave," Catherine says when Sam finally comes inside for water. "This isn't your fight, and I won't have your death on my conscience." Sam pauses with the dipper halfway to his lips. "Where would you go? Back to Cheyenne, where they can find you easily? Try to make it to Denver alone, assuming you have money for supplies?" Catherine looks away, because they both know she has neither the resources nor knowledge to survive on her own. Her comfortable life with James had left her unprepared for frontier survival, and 6 weeks of running has depleted what little money she escaped with. "There has to be another way," she insists. "Some legal authority." "With what?" Sam interrupts harshly. "You said the documents look legitimate. By the time any territorial authority investigates, you'll be dead, and I'll likely be in the ground beside you." The casual way he mentions his own death chills Catherine. This man has already lost everything that mattered, and now he's prepared to risk his life for a woman he barely knows. "Why?" she asks quietly. "Why are you willing to fight for me?" Sam leans against the counter, staring out at his land. You ever have a moment that changes everything? A single choice that divides your life into before and after? Catherine nods, thinking of finding James burning with fever. Mine came during the war, Sam continues. I was 19, part of a patrol that got ambushed. My sergeant took a bullet, was dying slow, and he grabbed my shirt with bloody hands. Promise me something, boy, he said. Promise you'll never walk away when you can help. Too many good people die because decent men decide it's not their problem. He made you promise, Catherine breathes. Made me promise, Sam confirms. And I've tried to keep it up every day since. When I wore a badge, when I met Martha, when I built this ranch, every choice came back to that moment. Catherine reaches across the space between them, covering his hand with hers. The touch is electric, charged with more than gratitude. I won't ask you to die for me, Catherine says firmly. But I won't run anymore either. We face it together, or not at all. Sam looks at their joined hands, allowing himself to imagine a future that includes someone else for the first time since Martha's death. Together then, he says, thumb brushing her knuckles. But we do this smart, not just brave. The attack comes at dusk, when dying light creates perfect cover for men with violent intentions. Sam spots them first 6 riders approaching from 3 directions with coordinated precision. Harrison and Cole have returned with reinforcements, and they're not planning to leave empty-handed. They're here, Sam says quietly, checking his rifle. He's positioned Catherine in the root cellar beneath the kitchen, armed with his backup revolver and strict instructions to stay hidden unless he calls for her. 6 men, Catherine observes through the cellar door crack. You can't fight 6 men alone. Won't be fighting them straight up, Sam replies with calm confidence. This is my land, my choice of ground. That counts for more than numbers. What follows is a masterclass in frontier warfare across Sam's familiar ranch. He spent the afternoon preparing lanterns positioned to blind attackers, tripwires across approach routes, supplies cached strategically for mobile defense. The first attacker falls to a rifle shot from the barn loft. The second stumbles into wire stretched across the corral entrance, his alarm cut short by Sam's knife. But Harrison's men adapt quickly, using fire arrows to flush Sam from prepared positions. The barn erupts in flames, eliminating his primary sniper's nest. "McKenna!" Harrison shouts. "Send out the woman, and maybe we'll let you live." Sam's answer comes as another rifle shot, sending Cole diving for cover. But Sam's ammunition runs low, and he's bleeding from a graze across his ribs. The odds shift against him with each passing minute. That's when Catherine makes the decision that changes everything. Against Sam's orders, she emerges from the cellar with his revolver, understanding that the man who saved her is about to die protecting her. "Harrison, I'm here. I'm the one you want." The shooting stops suddenly. Harrison steps into the firelight, bloody but smiling predatorily. "Mrs. Catherine Whitmore, so good of you to join us." "Let him go," Catherine says. "This is between you and me." "Oh, but he's involved now," Harrison replies. "Mr. McKenna chose to interfere. That makes him a liability." Catherine feels the trap closing, realizes Harrison never intended to let either of them live. But Sam has one final card. The explosion that rocks the ranch comes from the house itself, where he'd placed blasting powder near the stove. The carefully timed detonation creates chaos for Sam to make his move. Rolling from behind an overturned wagon, he comes up firing with deadly accuracy. 2 more of Harrison's men fall, suddenly shifting the numbers dramatically. Cole tries using Catherine as a human shield, his last mistake. Sam's bullet takes him between the eyes before he can complete the motion. Harrison, desperate, aims at Catherine. "She dies if you don't drop that gun." But Catherine throws herself sideways, spoiling his aim and giving Sam the clear shot he needs. The gunfight ends with Harrison face down in Sam's ranch yard, his scheme silenced forever. The surviving gang member throws down his weapons, begging mercy Sam grants, provided he confesses everything to territorial authorities. As dawn breaks over smoldering ruins, Catherine and Sam sit together on the porch steps, both alive against all odds, forever changed by the violence they've survived together. 3 months later, the McKenna Ranch bears little resemblance to the scene of that terrible night. Where the barn once stood, a larger structure rises from the ashes, built with insurance money and neighbors' help. The house, partially damaged in the explosion, has been rebuilt, with feminine touches, lace curtains, flower boxes, details that transform a dwelling into a home. Catherine stands in the kitchen, kneading bread while Sam updates his account books. The comfortable domestic scene would surprise anyone who'd known them 3 months ago. The grieving widow and isolated rancher who found healing in each other's presence. The investigation following Harrison's death revealed the full fraud perpetrated against James's estate. The debt documents were entirely fabricated, part of an elaborate scheme to steal from recently deceased merchants. Catherine not only cleared her husband's name, but recovered property worth twice what the criminals claimed she owed. But vindication isn't what transformed Catherine's life. That change came in smaller moments, realizing she was humming while making breakfast, catching Sam watching her with warmth in his eyes, the night she finally moved from Martha's room to the one she now shares with him. "The Hendersons are coming Sunday," Catherine mentions. "Mary wants to see the new curtains." Sam nods, smiling slightly. 3 months ago, hosting guests would have terrified him. Now he enjoys the company of neighbors who see him as a valued community member, not a dangerous hermit. "Speaking of the Hendersons," Sam says, setting down his pen, "Mary thinks it's time we made our arrangement official." Catherine's hands still in the dough, her heart racing despite Sam's casual tone. They've been living as man and wife in all but name, sharing home, bed, and the partnership that grows between people who faced death together. "Is that a proposal, Samuel McKenna?" Catherine asks, keeping her voice light despite threatening tears. "Might be," Sam replies, crossing to her. "Might be that I've gotten used to having someone to talk to over breakfast, someone who argues about which crops to plant, and reminds me to eat." His hands rest gently on her shoulders. "Might be that I've realized Martha didn't save me from loneliness just so I could waste the rest of my life mourning." Catherine turns in his arms, flour dusting her apron, eyes bright with hope. "And what about love? Might be you've fallen for a troublesome widow who brought nothing but danger?" Sam's answer comes as a kiss that tastes of coffee and new beginnings, of second chances and love built on friendship rather than mere passion. "I love you, Catherine Whitmore," Sam says solemnly. "Not the same way I loved Martha, that was different, but I love you with everything I've rebuilt since you knocked on my door." "I love you too," Catherine whispers. "You gave me back my courage, my hope, my belief that good men still exist." As evening falls, they stand on the porch where Catherine first sought shelter, watching sunset over land that's become truly theirs through love and sacrifice. The house glows with warm lamplight, no longer an empty monument to loss, but a living home filled with laughter and future plans. "No regrets?" Sam asks, arm tightening around her waist. "None," Catherine replies firmly. "This is where I was meant to be." If you thought these were crazy, you won't want to miss what happens in this next video.